Okay.
Great. All right, we're all set. Hey, everybody. Josh here from Visa Law AI. It's been a little while. Sorry for all the time confusion for those who had registered previously. This is more of a pure live stream, no registration type approach. In the future, we'll definitely make sure to have registration forms as strangers are outside Greg's house.
I'm getting my gutters done today.
Nice. So, yeah, so we're all here. What was that? Oh.
I said, I'm going to blur now.
Okay, sorry. No. I was just looking out for you. So the goal today is simple. We're just going to talk about prompts and prompt engineering in our frame, our specific kind of niche area of prompting, which is immigration law and automations related to immigration law. So some general concepts, and then we'll take it more granular as Greg kind of shares as the prompt guru, some of the things that he kind of maybe his process and the ways that he has built out a few specific prompts within our AI platform. Before we dive into prompting, though, I wanted to share just a few updates in the product as it relates to research and the general chat interface. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly before we dive into prompts, and just a few housekeeping things. You can leave comments on whatever platform you're viewing from, whether you're using the kind of StreamYard specific link or you're in X, LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook. You should be able to leave comments and we'll be able to see them. And we'll have plenty of time at the end for any Q&A. Any questions you have, we'll try to answer those. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and just give a few quick updates on the product. Let me do this here. Let's see. Great. So hopefully you guys can see my screen okay. This is the Gen dashboard page. And if you are to create a new chat, whether it's really document Q&A, legal research, or case law, you should now see a few things, improvements in our product as really in just the last month or two. One, first and foremost, is the ability to have inline citations in the responses. So as the response, or what we call the sort of summary, is drafted, it will include inline citations throughout that response, in addition to providing them at the bottom, and also the, pretty much our legacy way of doing it, which is just to provide all the related sources kind of at the bottom of the output. You will have inline source materials here. This is already live. The other piece that will be live.
I was going to say, why don't you click on one of those? Or I guess that's what you're going to show, but click on one of those inline citations.
Yeah. So when you hover over any of the sources, starting Monday, you'll be able to also just get a quick reference as to what the source is and the specific page. This is not live yet, but it will be live again within the next week. When you click on any of the sources now, instead of the old kind of iframe pop-up window that we've had for the last year, you'll have this sort of embedded PDF viewer, which will again take you to the specific page that's relevant in the source material. So it's just a much better interface, again, from what we previously had, which was just again like a pop-up on the screen. Some browsers would block pop-ups, or your browser, based on your own settings, might block the pop-up. So just ran into a lot of logistical challenges there. Now it will be just in screen. It will sort of push out from the right and will minimize your other windows. You can obviously just easily scroll through the document and close out when you're done. And it will sort of slide back out, and you'll be able to see everything just as it was before. So again, hopefully a much more intuitive experience as you're sort of diving through the source materials. This will be available again by next week in document Q&A, case law, statutes and regs, and as it already exists in the immigration research chat, it will be available everywhere else. So I just wanted to kind of highlight those three new features. That is the inline citations, the ability to hover over a source or a citation and see the source material, and then also click in to get the sort of slide out PDF view. So those are just a few recent enhancements we've made in the product, just to make that reviewing of the source material a little bit better. So yeah, those are just some things I wanted to highlight in Gen. Obviously, other features, and always open to feedback from our users and others who are using the product. So that's probably all by way of updates today that I have. And so I guess at this point we can just transition and talk about what our goal was for today, which was to talk about prompting within Gen. Greg, I might hand it over to you at this point, since I know you have already prepared some materials.
Yeah, I mean, I have a couple of slides, but before I get into that, and Josh, I haven't actually used screen sharing in StreamYard before, so I may need you to tell me what I'm supposed to do on here. But and maybe you can actually just show. Why don't you go into Gen and go to the prompt library and get that queued up? But I can talk about a few things about prompts. So prompts, I'm guessing that after 2+ years of ChatGPT being out, most of you are familiar with the concept of a prompt. And basically, these are the recipes for the AI. They are the instructions for what you want to accomplish with whatever AI tool that generative AI tool that you're going to be using. In Gen, it comes up in a couple places. So number one, in our law library, where you go in and you ask, those really esoteric questions to Gen, and what Josh just showed you as far as the how inline citations lay out. And by the way, Josh, you forgot to mention the one part that I put in there that I'm like that follow-up questions on there. That's also a new thing in there, where you when you're asking, talking about a particular legal research query, at the end it gives you ideas for like things you may want to ask now that you didn't get into, or things that it didn't get into, and you can dive deeper into it. But I'm only mentioning that because that is all happening based on a system prompt. That is sort of the background prompt that is instructing the AI how we want answers laid out. So, for example, I have in the system prompt a good example of an answer that I wanted to follow that format when it lays out a legal research memo when it comes out. I told it I wanted it to ask follow-up questions. I had various other things that I was asking the prompt to do. That is one place where, obviously prompting is really critical to the product. You guys are not part of that, because that's the background prompt that controls the legal research. Now we are actually working on in a future version of Gen, giving users the ability to actually put their own prompt, use their own prompt as a substitute for the system prompt. And there are instances where that might be the case. We don't have that capability now, but that's something that that's on our roadmap, that eventually we'll have something like that. Prompts also come up in Gen in the private GPT feature. This is basically where you're just using ChatGPT essentially, but you're putting confidential information in, and you're not, and that's why we set that up. But we do have the capability of having a custom prompt that a user can use that's tied to private GPT on there as well. You may have a certain task that you wanted to spend a lot of time on, and that's something that you can do there. Probably where most of you are going to, though, want to know about prompts is in document Q&A. Document Q&A is the part of Gen where basically that's where you have your own prompts, and you have the ability to upload documents that might be associated with that prompts, and you can run certain tasks on there. And I'm going to show you some examples of complex prompts that I've written to give you an idea of sort of what the capabilities are. One of the problems I think that people have when they go into ChatGPT or they go into these other AI tools is they kind of they just basically think of them as search engines, and they just post a query like they would be posting a query in Google. And unfortunately, if you do that and you get a okay answer or a subpar answer, and then you say just the AI is not great, or on there some of that is it may be actually that the AI couldn't do a good job of whatever you're asking, and but some of it's sometimes on the user that they did not give it great instructions. And I tell people, here's an analogy to way to think about it. If you let's just say you're a lawyer, you have this brand new associate, top of their class, came out of a fancy law school, and but they've never practiced immigration law before. And you need them to go out and research something and then maybe prepare a memo for the client, or whatever it is that you're asking them to do. If you just tell them, go do this research memo on this topic, and then they come back and they give you something that is really subpar in your mind because you expected something that was going to be have a succinct summary at the beginning, and then you wanted 2 or 3 pages of explanation, and you wanted the underlying sources um, cited, and maybe with them attached to the back of it, and you wanted it to go into certain issues and spend some time on it and all that. That's on you for not delegating well. And essentially, you have not given your associate a good prompt on there. The better instructions you give when you are delegating a task, the better results you are going to get in return. And that is the same issue with AI, that if you give it clear instructions, um, and you hit a bunch of elements, in that prompt design, you're going to get something that looks pretty nice on there. So what are the elements that you want to think about when you're drawing up these prompts? First of all, if you've looked at prompts, or attend any of these courses, you know that always at the beginning it's you're going to tell it a role. So let me, Josh, actually, this might be a good time for me to share this PowerPoint slide, or yeah.
Yeah. So if you're in
So
StreamYard here, it's just that center button in the option menu at the bottom. It says it's just got present, and then the first one in the list is
got it.
share screen. See
All
if
right.
that works.
Yeah, hang on a second.
Because I think you have several prompts that I would not have access to that you're working on.
Yeah, I'm trying to on here get it to show. Hang on a second. Entire screen. All right. I'm going to share right now this screen. Oh, well, I don't want to share the entire screen. Hang on a second. 1 second.
Yeah, it's a long list. You just have to pick the thing that's
I got it. Okay, master. Okay. All right. So are you seeing PowerPoint slides?
Not yet. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Yep.
Okay. All right. So let me see if I can make this slide. The main slide. Away from current slide. Are you seeing it or no?
Beautiful.
Okay.
Yeah.
It went to it's the whole screen you're seeing?
Yes. Yeah, this is great.
All right. So this is this is basically, sort of like all the things that you might have in a slide. In a prompt. First is giving it a task and telling a lot of details. So you're going to say, you're acting as an immigration lawyer, or you're acting as a marketing consultant, or whatever it is that you're doing. I worked on a business plan for a certain part of our practice, and I said, you are a business plan writer and consultant. And, so you kind of give it that, sorry, that's number two, persona. You give it a task as far as telling it basically what you want it to do. You give it some information, sort of like, I want section one to cover this. I want section two to cover that. That would be number three. You might list out the steps to get to the answer. That might include, for example, saying, I want you to ask me questions one at a time. And that's a really good technique, by the way, if you put that in a prompt to getting a better document or answer at the end. You might put in, um, I do this all the time. I'm going to show you an example of it in a minute, but templates or examples of what a good response might look like if you're working, for example, if it's a prompt you're going to use over and over again. You might put in a example of what a good what one version of that might be. Um, you can tell it you want it to be succinct. You can tell it you want it to be more in depth. You could say that I want this to be written, something that's appropriate for legal drafting as a lawyer, or something that maybe is just a plain English for a client. Um, anyway, and I also tell people if it's like you're getting something that's completely off track, then consider starting over. But what I will tell you is that if you write a good prompt or what you think is a good prompt, and then you use it and you get a subpar response, sometimes what I will do is I will take the prompt that I had initially, and then I will say, I tried this prompt out. I had this criticism. I'll be telling this in the, either I may do it in Chat GPT. I might do it in private GPT. It depends on whether there's any reason why there would be anything confidential in there. Um, and then I would say, rewrite this prompt considering the criticisms to see, and try and come up with some new language that would improve the answer quality. And one prompt I'm going to be showing you in a minute, we did four versions of this prompt before the team was satisfied that it gave a nice response on there. And, especially the more complicated the task, the more you need to be patient, and usually the payoff's going to be worth it if it's obviously if it's able to handle something really complicated that you do on a regular basis. So that's those are initial steps. Let me kind of just show you what that might look like. And this is only part of a longer form prompt, but this is one I love to show because it's an example of one of these prompts that you can use it's very versatile. This is a practice management advisor prompt, and it's basically dealing with some issue that you have in your firm that you need to deal with, something related to the practice. So this one, it's like you're giving it a role, law firm managing partner with 30 years experience who's now a consultant to law firms. So you have an idea you're going to get something at a fairly high level. um, and then basically you're going to give it a topic, which means that this is not a one time prompt. This is a prompt you're going to be using over and over again in different ways. And the task is to show it both sides of the argument and valid arguments on each side, et cetera, et cetera. And I told it the output I wanted, a 1,500-word article about the topic. I wanted metrics. I wanted to give me examples, case studies, et cetera. Um, Formatting with bullets where appropriate. I told it the tone, et cetera, on here. But basically, that's the whole prompt on here. And the topic at the end, this was just one example. What should your law firm's generative AI usage policy contain? But you can do anything that's in your practice under that topic line, and you'll get a nice memo with and you can tell it put citations, you can tell it to do whatever you want, so you have more resources to look at later. But that would be, this is an example of sort of those elements in motion. Um, Josh, I'm going to switch over and just show some of these prompts. And hang on a second. I think I have to stop sharing and then start sharing again in order to switch windows. So hang on a second. I'm going to switch over to Microsoft Word, um, where I'm going to show, if I can find Word on here. Where is a window? Hang on, hang on, hang on, hang on. Where's Word on here? I have too many things open. Um, it's not Chrome. Oh, you know what? Maybe it's because Word is not. Okay. Um, it's weird because I'm hearing people walking over my over on my roof over my head. Um, oh, I'm not, Josh, I'm not seeing that. I think if I do the whole screen, um, I'll be able to do it. So I'm going to do the whole screen. I apologize because it's going to look weird for a second, but hang on. And now you should see, do you see Word, Microsoft Word on the screen or no?
Yes.
Josh?
Yeah, I see it. I see it. Sorry, Greg. Yeah. Do
Okay.
see it.
All right. So I'm going to the prompt that I'm going to show you first is one that is a is an example of one that you would obviously use over and over again. So the idea on this one is a crimmigration analysis prompt, and what I wanted to do basically with this is I wanted to be able to advise the lawyer after looking at the court documents and sentencing documents for a client, and after looking at the statute under which the person was convicted, and referencing Mary Kramer's criminal immigration book that AILA publishes, all of which can be linked to this prompt. And after this, we're going to show how you would actually, run that prompt within Gen. I wanted to do an analysis on whether the client is potential, whether the client is potentially inadmissible for criminal admissibility and what waivers might be available. So going through this again, as a sophisticated virtual immigration lawyer, you can, in that part, you just say as a as an immigration lawyer, your task is to analyze whether a potential immigrant or non-immigrant is inadmissible because of the person's criminal history. You're going to review the statute, the regulation, the case law, and other documentation provided to you. So again, we hit in this one what the task is and what the role is. Then you're going to analyze whether a criminal activity has immigration consequences for a client, considering whether it qualifies as a crime involving moral turpitude, an aggravated felony, or another type of offense that may result in admissibility or deportability. Um, then I give it the structure, and that was something that I mentioned before is that you want to do. So first one, I wanted to determine if there's a conviction um, under INA 101. So it's going to look at the court documents that you had. It's going to look at Mary's book, which is going to go into what is a conviction and what is not a conviction, and it's going to make that initial determination. Um, it's going to look at the statute under which the person was convicted because you're going to have uploaded that. Um, and it's going to be looking for that in this prompt. And then again, you're asking it doesn't involve moral turpitude. So it's going to be referencing the criminal immigration book and the statute, and it's going to be looking at the factual documents that you gave it. Um, and then it's a if a it's again it's looking to figure out if it's a moral turpitude offense. It's looking to figure out if it's an aggravated felony, based again on the materials that you're providing. It's going to look at the sentencing documents to see if there are any exceptions based on being for the petty offense exception. These are again the things that if you were giving this assignment to, I mean, you could hand this assignment to an associate, for example, if you had all these instructions written out and ask the associate potentially to go through this analysis too. Um, Other grounds of inadmissibility, and then we're getting into 7 on exceptions and waivers and whether they might be available. And then I'm asking it to do a final assessment. The output, I'm telling you, after it's doing that analysis, that's not necessarily giving you that whole analysis. It's doing that in the background. But when it gives the output, it's going to be divided into these 4 sections. Assess whether the client's inadmissible due to the criminal activity, identify and discuss waivers and strategies, suggest additional documents or explanations that you might find that might have helped the app do, the prompt and the AI do a better job. And then also, if you're dealing with an RFE, I've asked it to give you some suggested language that you might include in an RFE response explaining why the client is not inadmissible. Now, this next language for version 1 of document Q&A, if you are referencing documents that are attached, which a lot of our prompts, that's why they work really well, is because of the ability to attach those documents. This is some magic language that you need to, just paste in. And that's all you need to do is just paste it in. You don't have to understand sort of what it's doing and all that, but you paste that in and it's going to have the ability to read the attached documents. In our next version of document Q&A, we're just going to have something where you check that you want it to reference attached documents, and it'll automatically insert that language without you having to know it. The next thing that I wanted to show you is boilerplate. This is language that I have worked out and over time that helps improve answer quality. And one of the nice things about document Q&A in the prompt library that you have is that you can look at prompts that are there and you can cut and paste language that you think would improve it. And I'm happy actually after this to give this prompt to anybody that wants it. But basically, this is telling it a lot of things just based on trial and error of where we've seen problems in answers, and I've added lines to reduce that. Another thing that I do is I have this language verification and final review, and what it's doing is basically telling it, it's like, before you give me your answer, I want you to review it one more time, check everything, and then give me the answer. And you may say, like, doesn't it do that automatically? And I guess it sort of does that, but what I have found over time is that when I've given it this extra language, I've just reduced problems with the responses and reduced any issues with if it seemed to drift or given obviously incorrect answer. That's helped to reduce that. And then of course I have this end objective here. That is the crimmigration prompt. The other one I wanted to show you is, hang on a second. That was for the criminal immigration folks. This is one that is an ability to pay prompt to deal with an ability to pay request for evidence. So this is for an I-140. It could obviously come up in other contexts. This is the one I was telling you that the paralegal attorney team, we were at. I think that somebody sent the questionnaire and teams on the law firm side is like, anybody have some good templates for RFP responses for this particular issue? And I said this would be an interesting task to automate, because we do have sort of generic RFE response prompts, and they do a good job. But I wanted something that was really specific to this task, and you're going to see why it has more capabilities here. So again, giving it the role and the task. You're a sophisticated immigration lawyer. Your task is to analyze an employer's financial information, determine if the employer meets the ability to pay requirements for an I-140. You're going to apply the USCIS policy memorandum on this topic, which I am including in the prompt itself on there. So note that this is a little bit different. I'm actually including the law, but you could potentially just include that language as an attachment to the prompt. You don't necessarily have to reference it in the prompt itself. But this was just a different way to do that. So in this case, what the person's going to be doing is they're going to upload the financial documents that they're thinking about including in the RFE response. And I give them some examples. The prompt, I give it some examples of things that it might see: tax returns, annual reports, payroll records. And you're going to analyze those to determine to assess the employer's ability to pay the proffered wage as required under the policy manual. And you're going to find red flags. You're going to look for inconsistencies. You're going to provide a summary of the employer's financial standing. And then you're going to suggest additional documentation that the employer might consider including. And so it may be that you run this, and then it's going to tell you, you probably should have this, this, and this attached. And so you may want to run this again later on after the same prompt, after you've had additional documents, and see what it has to say on here. I gave it the sort of 4 sections in the output that I wanted. The accessibility to pay, identify red flags, suggest additional documentation, suggest language to include an RFE response. Then I have that magic language for attachments. Then I have specific instructions actually for this task. It's just things to note. And this is stuff that was coming. Remember, I was telling you before about paralegals and attorneys, the feedback I was getting. So when I asked the AI to help me rewrite the prompt, these were some of the suggestions for additional language that it gave me. And we went through this again a couple of iterations and found that after we went through that process of rewriting this thing a couple of times, that it was giving better answers. So it was the first time it was kind of mixing up parties and doing some other, and mixing up some other things. So adding this language was able to deal with that, clearly distinguish between the foreign parent company and the U.S. petitioner. For example, focus on the relevant documents, organize the documentation, blah, blah, blah. So had that. And then we have the boilerplate stuff that I was showing you before. I had again, the final review stuff. And then here you can see the policy manual, which is most of the, it's really the last 10 pages of this prompt. This prompt is 14 pages, by the way. But it's this is a task when somebody's writing an RFP response on ability to pay, they could be spending, half a day working on this RFE response. Sometimes RFE responses take longer than the initial petition took. So you can see why this would be something that would be fairly helpful. And Josh, I'm going to get back over and stop the screen share for right now. And I'm going to turn it back over to you. And then you can maybe show how one would use this actually in our product, like how they would actually get that prompt into it and how they would attach something. If you could show a little bit about that, that would be good.
Yeah, for sure. So what I'm going to do is share the prompt library as it exists today. And one of the things that Greg mentioned, I'll highlight some of the additional capabilities. Obviously, this is for a lot of you, maybe some of you are Gen users and you've never used document Q&A in this way before. It's completely okay. It's basically like going from like 0 to 100 really quick. I recognize, this is really the most customized aspects of our product. So our team is, again, happy. We always say in our use case calls, we're happy to help your team customize some of these prompts, give you insight. Anyway, if you're inside of the product, if you're in the dashboard, there are a few different ways you can get to it. There's this little section called library down here that has the prompt library button. You can click that, or you can just go to the tab on the left that says library. And this will actually take you to this full, this more comprehensive library page that has the prompt library across the top. It's sort of like a horizontal nav menu. So what you're going to see here in this quote unquote prompt library, when you first log in, any prompts you see here are prompts that our team has created and shared across all users. We call them system prompts. You could just refer to them as like Visa Law team prompts, right? Like our team has curated them. We've released them into the wild, and you'll have the ability to, look at them and even make your own versions. And I'll explain in a second. So there's a various and large amount of functionality around the prompts. And some functionality that we're about to add in addition to what I'm about to talk to you about. So when you go into this page, there is a add prompt button. This is just creating a new prompt. And you can give the prompt a name. Description is just for your own internal purposes. So if you wanted to give a description outside of the name itself. The content would be the actual material, the content in the prompt. So that Word document that Greg was sharing with you, for example, would be the content of the prompt. So you would just copy and paste that in here. If it was in a Word file or Notion document, wherever that content was sitting, you would just have that provided here. And again, the context window for our prompt inputs is very large, as Greg was showing, like 10, 15 page document. You can provide that amount of content into the system. And then you have the temperature setting, which this is more specifically geared towards the language model we use. So we work directly with OpenAI, and temperature just references, in simple terms, creative license. So 0 would be very literal. And then, as you get closer to 1, would be, again, more creative and basically giving the language model license to create content maybe outside of the content that you provide. Right. So a lot of times people refer to this concept as like hallucination, but in this setting, that's not really hallucinating. You're just actually telling the system like, hey, be creative, make up something. The closer you get to this like side of the temperature. And I don't know if it's still the case, but I believe ChatGPT by default, maybe the premium versions now allow you to customize all this, but initially it was 0.7 was the temperature setting for like ChatGPT when you went and asked a question. I'm sure other models kind of have a similar approach. We do now have tags so that you can quickly tag prompts and find them much easier in the library. Because what we found is users, if you have a lot of prompts, it's really hard to identify. Maybe you want to have like a business immigration prompt category or a specific subgroup of these. And then Greg had mentioned this idea of like referring to source materials. So actually in your prompts, we have already made that change. So as long as you put the area of the product that you plan to use this prompt in, like for example, if you wanted to use this on your own documents, you would click document Q&A, and the prompt will automatically include all of the available context, like whatever documents you upload, whatever documents you select in your library, it will have all of the whatever markdown or language in there that's going to show it's going to refer to that context. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions about this, just let us know. But this is just assigning the prompt to a specific area of our product. Then you can, this is really for our internal team. Individual users don't have this capability, but our internal team can look at a prompt and say, yeah, we want to make this a system prompt so that basically all of our users can see it. Then we have this capability called quick prompting. It will be likely sunsetted in our next version of Gen, because we're going to have a much simpler way for people to get to all of these, so like custom automations. But for now, what we have is this idea called a quick prompt. So basically, when you go into a chat, I can show you an example really quickly. So if I'm in a chat, if I'm in the chat area, say I want to ask a question to a document, right? So I've like selected a file from my library and I'm ready to ask the question. You'll note that the prompt library tab down here to the bottom left, anything that has a Thunderbolt next to it is what we call a quick prompt. And all that means is as soon as you click that button, it's going to run the prompt automatically. You don't have to actually type a query into the box. There's nothing you have to type here. It's just like, okay, really all I had to do for this prompt to complete it was just upload or select the relevant documentation. Similar like with the RFE analysis prompt, right? Like all you really have to do for this prompt is upload or select an RFE and then click this button and it will run that task. So you don't have to go down here in this box and click like, please complete this task or run task. You can just click the little Thunderbolt. That's all that functionality does. It's just making it one less step when you're running these. So that's the quick prompt functionality. Again, our internal team has the ability to set things as default prompts. So that means like when you go into document Q&A, when you go into the immigration research area, we have prompts that we say are default prompts. And so those will be the ones that will be selected automatically. Just like we have like default content that we select for the immigration library, right? We always select the relevant primary sources and secondary sources. Same concept, just with the instructions that we give the language model. Duplicate prompts really important because if you go into any of the prompts that our team has created, you can't edit them. It won't let you save and edit to like prompts that our team creates, but you can duplicate them, right? So you could, if you wanted to copy a prompt that our team made, you could duplicate it and make changes to it as you wanted. So you wouldn't have to start from scratch in that scenario. You can obviously, of course, also delete the prompts. So that's some basic functionality. There's one more feature that I want to highlight because I think it's relatively new and somewhat subtle, and that's that you can actually add content from the law library to your own data set, like to your own personal library.
Right, like the book I was mentioning from Mary.
Exactly. So if I wanted to go in and say, okay, I want to see secondary material and I want to see AILA-Link books, it's going to show me all the AILA-Link resources in the product. And then what you can do is select, let me see, I was just actually going to say
the cookbook.
Yeah, right. Yeah, let's do that. So basically, let's do volume 1. So basically, all you would have to do is find the resource and click this button at the bottom that says duplicate to personal library, and then it's readily available in document Q&A for any of your own custom prompts, right? So it's kind of like a workaround to not being able to upload your own files into the immigration research data set that we have. And pretty soon we are going to create a much more robust capability so that you'll maybe have all of the secondary source materials in your own library by default. Like right out of the gate, you'll have the cookbook and other resources. Like you don't actually have to do this manual work of like duplicating the sources you want. And all that means is like when you're in a document Q&A chat, what we're explaining is like right now, if I wanted to upload a file and ask a query, and I wanted to, if I wanted to refer to relevant law or an AILA resource or something like that, it wouldn't be able to access it by default. You would just have to make sure it's in your own library. And so basically you would select files, right? And so you would actually select those files as part of the search. I'm getting maybe a little into the weeds here, but I did want to highlight one aspect of this that we're about to improve in the system. And so we're about to create a functionality, and I don't want to overwhelm people because I know this is probably like a lot. They're like looking at all this like, man, this is so many different like buttons and options. And I recognize that that's all very true. One of the key capabilities around linking up the data set that we have, our proprietary immigration data set, is creating a function we call an anchor file or an anchor category. So this is kind of expanding on what I just explained to you, which is when you create a prompt, you can anchor it, as we say, anchor it to a branch of the immigration data set, right? So maybe you want to connect it to the primary source material. Maybe you want to connect it to the secondary source material. So this is kind of the stage of development of this feature set. So, or kind of like how it's progressed over time. It's like we're now getting to the point where essentially when you have your own custom document that you want to run against the immigration data set, you will soon be able to do that in the system. The duplicating to your personal library is just kind of the short-term band-aid until we get that done. So for example, I guess the way to kind of bring this full circle is that second prompt that Greg showed you, the ability to pay. And I don't know if this, Greg, if this is the final one or not, but essentially, he copies and pastes the entire, like he copy and pasted the policy manual in, you saw in that Word document. This would be a solution where you could just link it to the policy manual in the library and it would just be set, right? It's like a quote unquote anchor file or anchor context essentially. So this is like bringing that functionality kind of full circle. So you wouldn't have to go in, for example, and change the language of the prompt when the policy manual changes or when the law changes. It's just always going to be linked to our proprietary immigration set. That's not available right now, so don't want to get like super excited or anything, but that's a feature that we're working on. So now, okay, that's a lot. But let's go ahead and try one of these, right? So I think you wanted to try, let's see, the crimmigration. And Greg, I don't know if you may want to.
Well, I don't have the documents to upload. Let's pick a different one because I don't have the documents to upload to associate, like the sentencing documents for that.
Sure.
Why don't you try like the RFE one just to kind of show like how that would work?
What documents would you upload there? Just like the criminal documents?
So you'd upload so kind of like take a step back and think of like what a lawyer would need to go through this analysis. They would need the sentencing documents from the court. maybe the arrest and sentencing documents, like all that stuff that the lawyer typically asks the client or the client's criminal lawyer to give to them. They would need to have the actual language of the criminal statute, which, by the way, Josh, it's worth mentioning that all of that's accessible. All the federal and state statutes and regulations are in our statutes and regulations new library. I don't know if people might not even know that it exists, but we have all the ability to access all federal and state case law and all federal and state statutes and regulations for, like, I mean, that's millions and millions of documents that are available on there. So if you could run basically a query saying, I need to see the text of this statute, it would answer, you'd ask that in the statutes library, and you'd get that, and you would get a link to the actual statute that you could then download from there, save that on your computer, and then upload that in as one of the documents in document Q&A for that particular task, if you don't have a copy of the statute on your own. And then the last thing is you need to give it the actual law that it can be able to do the analysis. So you could give it the Immigration Nationality Act, but Mary's book I like because it's sort of it's a thorough treatise on the topic, and it actually has all of the statute language in there, as well as Mary's great overview of what the law is on that particular area. So it's a really good example of how you can take a reference book and give it certain facts and documents, and then get something really nice in the end because you had all those ingredients.
Right. Yeah. So I have an example. I do have a few different example documents we could use for some of these prompts, but one of them being the a sample RFE. So I can just so that was just sort of like the file selection window. I'll click this RFE analysis and then just say run task or something. Again, I could have just clicked the kind of quick prompt functionality to bypass, but again, how long does that take, right? But the output here is from this RFE analysis prompt, which this is one we didn't look at. So I guess maybe I'll show the answer, and then we can go back and look at the prompt that we created. So essentially this custom prompt that our team has built, and it's still actually going because I see the scroll bar continue to expand, but the different tasks we have, task 1, just a simple description of the items listed on the RFE, the required items. And on this example, there are actually several. And so there were 5 items that were listed on the RFE, and it just outlines each of those. Task 2 is to provide examples of adequate evidence for those items that are listed. And so this would just be a simple breakdown of things that could actually be provided via the RFE response. And again, the prompt is not creating the response itself. Maybe more to come in the future on some of that tooling. But right now, this is just a simple analysis of the RFE, right? You could just quickly upload it as soon as you get it, and this could provide your team just some quick analysis and insight. So this is all the potential evidence could be provided, and then task 3 are the potential counter arguments, for what they have suggested, wasn't provided in the initial petition, for example. In this first one, it's the national importance of the proposed endeavor. Fallacy being the RFE may assume that the lack of current national recognition equates to a lack of national importance. So just kind of outlining some of the things that could come up. And just like I mentioned, right now the sites are at the bottom, but by next week you'll see the inline citations in document Q&A, just like you do in the research. So you'll be able to click in and see in all the source materials you give it and all the context you give it where it's kind of getting that information. So
yeah,
and be helpful.
And I should say, like, an example on an RFE response can be, you're going to get a much deeper and better response if you have some anchor documents like a treatise or like like the USCIS policy manual in the background, where it's and I always like the policy manual because that's what the government is looking at. So when you can actually like say this is contrary to the policy manual on there, it has a little more influence probably because that's considered to be their, a super important document to them on there. But that's the reason why it's, important to think about what documents you might include with your prompt in order to get a better analysis.
Yeah. So this is the written out, and we can scroll through this. This is the actual prompt, right? So in this RFE analysis prompt, we have these 3 tasks. Task 1, just like it generates in the output, we give instructions. Begin by providing a detailed summary of the specific items which the government is seeking additional information. It should be not merely the list of items, but also explain their significance in the context of the RFE. And then, obviously for providing other objectives, your goal is to create a clear descriptive overview that pinpoints exactly what the government is asking. And then task 2, examples of adequate evidence. So just following up the summary suggests examples of evidence that could potentially satisfy each of the government's requests. Like Greg mentioned, having example RFEs, perhaps that you could click on or provide in your own data set as context would be meaningful there. Just to kind of give an example of maybe previous RFEs you had done, and that could be a sort of like, kind of a quote unquote library it could look to. The task 3 being potential counter argument. So you can just kind of see our instructions were provided in this really, clear and structured way. And just like I mentioned, all of these items at the bottom, the question, context, and all these things will be automatically included. So you don't have to worry about placing that in your prompt. But just the language itself, what you're asking for, the instructions, and everything should really flow from there. So hopefully that's one example. Let me kind of go back over here and see.
Josh, I also wanted to, I didn't want you to forget sort of like what we talked about beforehand as far as that offer that we had for users that are interested in, building out prompts that are for their particular practice areas or things that they, maybe you want to do a Child Status Protection Act analysis tool, or maybe you want to do a citizenship at birth tool, or like whatever it is that you want to do. I am here for you. What I'd like to do is to have one-on-one sessions with Gen users to help them develop these prompts, and then in exchange, if it works and we've gone through it and we're satisfied that it's putting out a good output, I would like to make those available to the community, and that's what I want in return is for the broad Gen user base to be able to benefit from it. But I would love to work one-on-one with our individual users who have an idea for something that they would like to do. We'll meet, we'll talk about like what would be the documents that you would typically include with that. We'll work on writing the prompt, and we'll work on testing the prompt until we get an answer we think is a pretty good answer, and then we will release it, and I will give our users credit in the prompt as well, giving you author credit on there. Maybe some of our best power users can be that will be the appeal to them, is that they will see themselves as authors of some of our more popular prompts. But let Josh know or let me know, and we will work on that. So we're going to set up we'll set up a system for sort of like these office hours individually with me, and we will get them on my calendar on there. So Josh, more details to follow about how that will work. I think that we have one question already about how to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say the easiest way is just reach out to us. Let's say info@visalaw.ai is our email. That could be an easy one, or we do have a form on our website just to reach out and say, hey, I was on the the webinar today, and I heard about the prompt, the prompt idea working with Greg. Just that simple. Our team will follow up. So just to recap, basically Greg Siskind is saying he'll work with you individually to develop your own prompt if you're a Gen user and have an idea. Just so everyone knows. And this is our This is the email, info@visalaw.ai. And you can just submit just a simple email that way, or just go to visalaw.ai, go to our website. We have a contact us form. It's just got a really simple description box. You can just fill in something there, and we'll follow up. Joseph or I will follow up directly with you. I did see also we had another question about drafting. So I did want to display it, I guess. Basically, it was just like, does your LLM have the ability to draft a cover letter for marriage-based petitions? And the answer to that is we do have some capability around cover letter drafting, but it's in our drafting. It is a sort of separate functionality in our product. So I'll send a follow-up email. If anyone has any other questions, go ahead.
I will say you could probably, for, a cover letter for a marriage-based petition is, probably a shorter letter. There are, if you wanted to try and work on something in document Q&A for sort of a simpler drafting task, you might get an okay result if you uploaded sort of all the bona fides documents and then gave it a nice template in the prompt for what your marriage-based petition letters would typically look like on there. So our drafts product is really sort of, is designed for for complex, longer form drafting. I would say that if you're producing something under 5 pages, probably like even under 4 pages,
yeah,
2.5
pages.
Yeah, the document Q&A is probably going to be good for that particular kind of task. If you're doing something longer form, you're going to want to use drafts for that. But we can try it and see what kind of results we get if you have but that's the thing to think about, is sort of, is the output something you're expecting to be more than just a couple of pages? If so, then you probably need to use a more complex tool, which is our drafts tool.
Yeah. And so, yeah, that's essentially how that's how we distinguish the products, right? Even though they kind of operate and work very differently, the chat-based tooling that we have with document analysis and the private GPT tooling, it really can only give you up to essentially 2.5 to 3 pages on its best day, right? Because you're giving it a lot. If you give it a really long prompt, you're pushing, a lot of what they call the context window. You're pushing a lot and the limit there.
In drafts, drafts is like a multi-prompt approach, where you're going to, like, each section of a document is basically coming from a prompt that was, written on the fly, essentially using that tool based on your documents uploaded and information that you provided. And you have to, if you're doing a longer form document with a lot of words in it, you're going to have a lot of prompts for it. The only other way that you could do that is essentially to build out each section of a document with a separate prompt. And that's not super convenient to do that, but there are sometimes, you might be able to do something like that if you separate it out on there. But I think for what you're asking about here, it's going to depend a little bit on what your is married. Some of those marriage-based applications, they can be pretty short. The cover letters, you're listing out the documents, you're listing out just sort of like some basic information about how the clients met on there, and and it may only be 2 pages, 3 pages. So that might be a good fit for something you can do in document Q&A, and we can try it out.
Yeah. So there's one submission right there. We can definitely follow up, and it seems like it could be something that could be done. Go ahead, Joseph.
I have a question. Yeah, Greg. So I spoke to a user recently, a few weeks ago, and he only handled BIA appeals, right? And he asked if the AI could like, if he could feed it the asylum, I guess, decision from the judge, and then have the AI find holes in the argument, and then base his base his argument off of like what the AI said. And I was like, yeah, try the document Q&A, upload the decision, and then just ask the AI if to help you, I guess, file a BIA appeal. And I haven't heard from him since, and I'm assuming it worked, but maybe we could build out a quick prompt for that.
Yeah, you could. So any of that kind of thing, you could actually develop I would say with that, what you would, probably want him to think about is sort of like list out like what, really kind of think through what he wants this thing to do, other than just like help me with the BIA appeal. That's when I was giving that example before of a delegation to, a young attorney or paralegal. If you said, draft me a BIA, response, language for a BIA appeal on there, you're going to probably get a lousy response. But if you give it like, I want you to look at the judge's decision. I want you to look at this is the law. That was the that was decision was made based on that, and here's what I want you to consider. And it's sort of like you give it that you give it enough stuff, and you write a prompt. Maybe that's a little bit deeper, you'll probably get a pretty good response on there. He's not looking necessarily for, and he could do it basically. I'm going to tell you one, you can do it each argument as a separate, as a separate query. For example, if first thing you might do is like, give me the arguments that I might use in response, and it's going to give you a relatively shorter one. Then you might say, do another prompt, and it's like, take those arguments one by one and say, now I want you to draft for me a response using this particular argument. And here's the, so you could, sometimes you're going to actually use a couple of prompts for each section. So one example, Josh, of that, and Joseph here is an RFE response. The RFE response initially might do an overview of the RFE, a list of potential arguments that you might make, and also telling you what documents that you might want to consider including. Then you might want to have a second prompt that is about RFE drafting, response drafting, where you will upload the documents that were suggested based on the first prompt, and put those into the second prompt, and then ask it to start drafting for you. But you need to kind of go sequentially through that process where you ask, you do step one is prompt one, step two is prompt two, and you need to do step one in order to be able to give the proper information in step two, the second prompt. So you just kind of have to think about sort of like breaking down. You don't have to code, you don't have to know anything complicated, but you do have to sort of like take a step back. How do I approach this task in the real world? Let's pretend we don't have AI, we're doing this the old-fashioned way. How would you step by step go about handling whatever is assigned to you in an RFE response or whatever you're doing? And basically that's what you're trying to replicate with prompt drafting, is to get the AI to follow the same steps and give it the same resources that you need to manually do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you use the AI also to like produce this prompt for you?
Oh yeah, that's my dirty secret, is that I use AI all the time to help me, on some of the more complicated stuff. And it's like, and I'll say, this is what I want to accomplish. And any of you guys can do this, but and I do it a lot of times in ChatGPT, but I'll say, this is what I want to accomplish. I want it to, and I'll give it as much information as I can think of there. And it's like, I want you to write me a prompt that you think would get me to that result if I was using my my AI legal research, my AI immigration law suite of products, and it will oftentimes give me something really good for starters. That immigration prompt's a good example of that, where we kind of I dug in, it gave me a really good first version of that. Then I would ask it to rewrite this or that, or it's like, I really want you to cover this also and all that. And then it would keep rewriting it until I got something way more sophisticated than I would ever get if I just was doing it without any help. So yes, AI can be a huge help in terms of coming up with better prompts.
Yeah, in fact, I know Josh Sennett, who's not on the call today, but we had talked about this idea, and I think we might have one that's not publicly shared, is basically like a prompt builder prompt. Like essentially all you would do is upload the output that you want, whether it's a document or just copy and paste it in the, you can copy and paste it into the actual text box, query box and document Q&A, and just say, this is what I need. These are the things that I was planning to provide to get this output. and just ask it to generate a prompt, like an ideal prompt for you. I mean, that might be a good first take at it. We've historically always viewed feeding AI like the actual first draft that we make, and then just having it make it better. I mean, I guess if you were in a time pinch and you just wanted to see what the AI generated, you could just literally upload the output you wanted and just ask the system to generate, like the actual text of the prompt.
Yeah, or you could relate it to that, and it's maybe what you meant, but let's just say Hobie, and I'm sorry if I got your name wrong, on here, wants to do a marriage-based cover letter. You might have, this is a sample of a cover letter that I do that I like, and I've gotten good results for it. I want to create a prompt to help me, be able to more quickly generate this kind of output. Give me a sample prompt with that would tell me what the AI needs in order to be able to produce this output on there, and it could probably give you a pretty good overview for that. But that's certainly a technique you can use.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I know we've gone over today, and I appreciate everybody for sticking around. The one last thing on the BIA appeal idea, Joseph, that I might suggest, or kind of a thought is, we tend to also forget when we're in document Q&A that we also have this really large immigration data set. So even if they didn't know the relevant case law, that could be like task one. It's like, ask the immigration data set, what is the most, what are the relevant cases related to this appeal? And then use the document Q&A prompt from there. This kind of idea of like a multi-step approach. I hope in the future we'll basically have this concept of like prompt chains, or like basically multiple prompts that can build out like kind of like workflows almost.
Yeah.
But basically they could search the immigration data set for the relevant law, and then just take that actual output and then plug that into their document. That could be part of the prompt, the final prompt that they're running to get the full the larger analysis on. Anyway, tons of different ways to go about it. You can definitely get into the weeds with the custom prompt building. But
I was thinking maybe like ask the AI, hey, what are the elements of a successful, I guess, BIA appeal, right? And then say, okay, now can you help me draft a engineering prompt? Here's engineer, can you help me draft the prompt? And here's what a really good one looks like, right? And then just kind of like build on top of it, keep building on top of it until you get like and then here's the law, right? And then just keep building on top of it until you get the final.
Yeah, and keep in mind, in our materials, we have a number of ALA toolbox books and books with templates and all kinds of things. So even if you don't have anything in your personal library that would be a good template, the odds are pretty good that we have something in our library that would be helpful in terms of incorporating that into the prompt on there. So that's also something to look for, even if it's something that really esoteric. But we have the litigation toolbox, we have the cookbooks, we have a lot of that stuff in there. So that's stuff that's really helpful in terms of being able to incorporate sample language and example language into your prompts.
Absolutely. And just for clarification, what Greg's talking about is when you go into the library, just for all of you Gen users who are doing this, for other things. So basically you can go into the law library and you can search. It is obviously we have it sort of sectioned out by these larger categories, but even if you go into things like primary, sort of primary law, we have various sort of, we kind of slice the materials into, these various sections. So basically, you can go into the secondary materials area and go to ALA link and see, some of these resources, like here's the 2 volumes of the cookbook, right? Here's the FOIA toolbox. We have, here's the litigation toolbox. So we have all these, and you could just go in here and say, okay, duplicate to my personal library, and then it's there. And you can always use it, like Mary Kramer's book. Let me go ahead and duplicate to my personal library. So you can utilize all of that with your own documents as soon as you click that button. It's just, again, most people don't realize that all of this kind of filter, you can like narrow your search in the library to like specific types of documents. Obviously I could have searched for, I could go up here and search a book title, or I could search, for a specific court case or something just in the search bar. but you can also filter. I just, sometimes I think we forget to like mention that some of this stuff's available. But anyway, reach out if you have an example prompt you want us to help you with. I guess that could close this, close shop for today. Appreciate everybody for joining. And hope you have
it was helpful.
Yeah. I hope so. Hope people really enjoyed it, and we'll talk soon. Have a good afternoon, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.